Hey, IG fam, Rachel Fearnley back again with another episode of my Soul Abundance sessions. And today I am super excited to have my friend Amy Morrow, on talking about healing the motherline. And interestingly enough, I feel that healing the motherline as a title, as a description of what we're doing, is actually quite self-explanatory. I think that the majority of us can connect to like what the motherline is, and the fact that maybe we're holding some kind of trauma, some kind of stuckness, stickiness in that matriarchal lineage. And if the motherline is kind of confusing for you, if you're like, I really don't understand what that is, then Amy is going to be sharing about that. But it's such beautiful work that she's doing. So she is a Reiki practitioner, amongst many other things, and she's really focused in deeply on this idea of the motherline. So we're going to have a really great chat about what that means, what it looks like, what the motherline is, how it impacts us, and all of those things. And if any of you have any questions at any point during this, then just feel free to write them in the comment, or if you're watching this on the replay, you can write it at the in the comments, and we'll respond afterwards. So I'm gonna let Amy in. Quick times. Yeah.
Hi,
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm so good, thank you. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. Thank you. I am so excited about this. So I just gave a little description, but I will give another kind of little description before I hand it over to you to introduce yourself. So, Amy and I met in Bali. Amy is now living in Australia. And Amy, I mean, I'll leave you to kind of explain more of what you do, but essentially you are a Reiki practitioner, and you have been practicing for a while, and you've really started to hone in on healing what you call the motherline, which, as I mentioned in my intro, like I feel that as we've discussed, we spent quite a lot of time discussing the ins and outs of your business. It doesn't really need a lot of explanation. I mean, there are probably some people that are like, what's the motherline? But I feel like the majority of people are going to be like, yeah, I kind of get it. Like, I kind of understand what that means, even if it's not a word or a phrase that has ever come into your own kind of vocabulary. So I'm really excited to have a chat with you more about this, because I think it's such an interesting topic. We all have a mother, even if she's not on this planet in human form. So it's something that like we can all relate to in some way, shape, or form. So Amy, yeah, just tell us a little bit more about yourself, about the work that you do, like how you came to land on this such specific idea of healing the motherline.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, firstly. So lovely to see your face and to be chatting with you. Yes, I'm a Reiki therapist, and I've been working as a Reiki therapist for quite a long time and working on myself at the same time. And I guess, I work really personally with people, one-to-one generally, and the work is really intimate and personal for people. It's on a sort of a really deep transformational level. And I realized in doing some work around myself and actually wanting to get in touch with more of my feminine side, I came to realize through a collision of events that I was actually working on my motherline. So I can't claim the term, because I first came across it when I was reading a book called Rise, Sister, Rise by Rebecca Campbell. And it sort of all hit me at once. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been doing without even realizing. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on healing my motherline. And so I think that was sort of just over a year ago. And in doing that and sort of focusing on that, I realized that this is really amazingly powerful work for me and for the people that I work with. And so, yeah, through working with you and working on my work, I realized that this is something that I could bring in for a lot of other people.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. It's, you know, as I mentioned, like I feel that everybody can relate to that because I think in some way, shape or form, everybody, and I know that your work doesn't just go into like your, you know, your direct mother. I know it doesn't just stop there. But I think some people can relate to just having like issues with mothers, right? With the mother. So I'm really curious, like as I mentioned, like I feel, and obviously knowing a bit more about your business, that it doesn't just, it's not just about like your relationship with your mom. So can you explain a little bit more, like a bit more depth, like what does it mean, the MotherLine? Like, does it go generations back? Does it go into like your own children? Like if you're a mother or you're, you know, you want to be a mother, like what's it really about?
So I just love it because it's so broad and encompassing of so many topics that fascinate and light me up. And you're exactly right. It is not just about our own mum or our relationship with our mum. So I think the feeling that is sort of invoked when we say motherline is, you know, this idea of feminine, this idea of the feminine energy that runs through all of us, whether we are a woman or a man. You know, we all have this aspect of feminine and masculine within us, and the mother line, just that word or that term just invokes this sense of, for me it's divine feminine, for someone else it might just be the feminine aspect or feminine energy. And then also, you know, another layer to that is the mothering that, yes, the mothering that we received when we were kids, when we were growing up. Then maybe the aspect of the mother that we are if we have kids and if that's, you know, what we've chosen for now. And then the mothering perhaps that we allow ourselves to receive now, you know, that energy of nurturing and comfort and reassurance. And, you know, do we allow that for ourselves right now, or are we able to give that to ourselves? Are we able to receive it from others around us, because it's not just our sort of direct genetic mother that we receive that energy from? And, you know, and this applies to not just women but also men, because everybody did have a mum and mothering of some kind at some point. So it's a reflection of all of that too. It's also incredible to think about, for me, the and maybe for other people too, the epigenetic vibrational imprint, which is like a big jumble of words, but really just meaning that, you know, we were in our grandmother's womb. So we were the eggs in our mum's developing body while she was developing in her mum. And so what was going on, you know, what was going on for our grandmother at that time? What was going on in her heart? How was she feeling? What were the emotions running through her body? What was she thinking about herself and her life, and what was going on, you know, in the world around her at that time? And I mean, I don't need to prove any of this scientifically, but epigenetics is a huge area of research at the moment, you know, showing that the environment within which our cells were growing is greatly influential on who we are now and how we express, how our DNA expresses. So there's that. And then there's also like the experiences and stories and beliefs that go, you know, back through the female lineage that sort of fans out behind us. You know, what did those women that walked before us, what did they go through? What did they experience? And how did that create the stories of their lives and what they believed about themselves and about the world? And how do those stories weave into that map that sort of ends up at destination us? You know, that like it's so multi-layered, the motherline, and we can go right back, you know, just thinking about or feeling into that ancestry. And it's so unique, because every single person's motherline or map or stories are all individual. And yeah, so the motherline is, wow, I mean, it's huge, right? When we think about it like that. And also then for me is on a soul level too, but that might be getting a bit esoteric for this conversation. But you know, how does the
Oh, not at
how
all.
does the mother, that feminine energy, how has that expressed through my infinite soul across, you know, across eternity? And then why is it expressing this way through me now? And yeah, so it's it,
Wow.
yeah, it's big, but it's beautiful. And I think it's really, I mean, this might be a good point to bring time to bring up this point, but um, it's not about the work with the motherline isn't about finding what's wrong or what's broken or you know, sort of trudging through the really hurtful or difficult stuff. You know, it's also about honoring and acknowledging and appreciating and recognizing everything that's gone before and how that really can strengthen and hold us up where we are now, you know?
I think that is so beautiful because it's something that I've been really leaning into recently is this idea of like this constantly trying to fix, trying to look for what's broken, looking for the bits that need to be like, you know, analyzed and resolved versus that idea of like we are already whole. And it's about actually integrating and embodying all the bits because that is ultimately, you know, we are the sum of so many parts physically and spiritually. So it's actually more of an integration process, and that's definitely a you know a big thing that I'm going through at the moment. I was like, oh, I need to stop fixing. Like I need to stop
Mm,
doing the fixie work and actually just like embody and bring it all in and accept all those parts.
yeah, yeah, absolutely right. And uh, this can be a really big part of this work because oftentimes we find, you know, we do notice the pain or notice the brokenness that we sense or feel, and there can be a tendency to blame or accuse or you know place responsibility. Or because that happened to them back there, that means that I'm like this, and you know there's nothing I can do about it, or it's just it's a broken part, or it's not good enough. And and that is absolutely not the intention in my work and in working with the motherline, because I feel that when we can, as you say, accept, which can sometimes, you know, be a process to get to, but when we can leave that stuff where it was and understand and have some insight around, you know, what that meant, perhaps why or to whom, and then just and sort of just leave it there, then we can start to step more into where we are right here and move from that place. Yeah.
Love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And how, like, when, because I assume you predominantly work with women. I mean, you obviously mentioned that, you know, obviously men have mothers too. And, you know, so I'm sure you do have some male clients, or at least are open to receiving male clients. But typically, like with women, because I sense that that's the majority of your people, is how does it show up? Like, what are the things that women come to you? Like, say if they hear, you know, hey, there's this lady Amy and she heals the mother line, and a woman's just like, I fucking need that. Like, I don't really know what it means, but I know that I need it. What are the main things that they come and they say, like, this is what's going on. Like, these are the things. Like, this is why I've come to see
Mm. Um, so there's one example that I can use, and it's got to do with women who have noticed themselves mothering in a certain way, mothering their kids, parenting their kids in a certain way. So, um, like they'll come and they'll say, you know, my daughter is, or my son is 10 or 11, and he does this thing where he speaks to me in this way, and I notice myself just become angry. I can feel this like anger and irritation just rising in me, and all these things are coming out of my mouth, and I'm not even there. I don't even realize what I'm saying. And then he fights back, and it ends up in this huge argument, and we end up in separate rooms and not speaking to each other, and it's just awful. And it, you know, that is one example, and one sort of situation where, as women and as mothers, we might notice, I guess, unconscious programming. Because generally, when women explain that situation or share that story with me, they give an indication that they're just not really present, that they're just not really able to control or manage what's happening in that situation, and it's not feeling aligned with the way that they really want to be connecting and interacting with their child. Children, if we have children, can be an incredible indicator. I mean, it was a way that I identified, I guess, my MotherLine coming through my daughter. She, one day, I'll just share this story with you. One day, she was playing in the backyard by herself, and I was inside, and suddenly I could hear her voice like rise and rise, and she was like almost screaming and shouting at herself really ferociously. And I was like, what is going on? And I sort of walked outside to just not interrupt, because I wanted to catch what was going on, you know. And she was just berating herself. She was 8. And it was so harsh and fierce. And she was even telling herself off for not being brave enough for wanting to run away. Like, it was really intense. And at any other time when that had happened, and it used to happen quite a lot, I would swoop in, feel very uncomfortable with the whole thing, swoop in, immediately try to stop her, tell her that that was not the way to be speaking to herself, that, you know, she needed to stop right away, and try and just change her mood, try and talk her down from the ledge and change her mood. And this time, I just stopped, and I looked at her, and I was like, wow, I just immediately saw the intensity of the pain and recognized it as my own. And I was like, oh my goodness, she is feeling my pain. This is way too big for her meager 8 years on the planet and in life, you know. What is this? So I swooped her up, took her into my arms, swooped her up, just gave her a cuddle, gave her everything that an 8-year-old would need, and just let her cry it all out. And in that, I was like, I asked my body, you know, is this hers or is this mine? And my body said, this is yours, and it's your mum's, and it's her mum's, and it's all of the pain that's gone before you. You know, so other women have shared similar stories with me, like, you know, that they can see it in their kids and it just doesn't look like their own. It looks too big for them. And then other ways it might show up is, a big one is voice, finding your voice and speaking your truth. That was a big one for me too. For years and years and years, I didn't know how. I felt afraid. I would just shut down. My nervous system would just be like, nope, and I would paralyze. And I think this is a similar experience for a lot of people. And in doing my own work, because I've been, you know, working with a Reiki therapist and working on myself for a long, long, long time now, in doing my own work and reflecting, you know, I could see that this was an expression of what I'd seen other women do when I was a child, you know, that the ways that I'd seen my own mum either use or not use, or connect or not connect with her own voice, my grandmothers, and the women around me, you know, the women that I grew up witnessing and watching. So a sharing of a voice or a voice shut down is a really common way that it shows up in people. It might be around the stories that you have around money, you know, relationship to money, relationship to abundance or scarcity or value, how much, you know, you value yourself in terms of money that you can earn or jobs that you can do or career paths you can take. For other women, and actually also men, it's shown up in whether they trust themselves or not. You know, a sense of always going with what someone else recommends or the other person suggests or someone else's idea rather than what I really know to be the right decision at this time, or, you know, what's going to be best for me in this situation. So there are so many ways that it can show up. And again, it's not about like blaming anything that's sort of wrong on the mother line. It's just that oftentimes it's where people might feel stuck or limited or blocked or shut down or just, you know, triggered. And they're really good clues for, you know, perhaps it would be worthwhile looking into whether the mother line will show up there or is influencing there or is impacting in a way that doesn't align or serve or resonate anymore, you know?
I got so much wisdom in all of that, so much, and I can relate to a lot of that. You know, being, you know, as you know, obviously, being a mum to a 3-year-old, one of the things that I often talk about is that I feel like I'm doing a lot of healing on my mother line by the fact that I have a child and I'm very aware of the patterns, not necessarily aware of everything, of course, but for me, and again, one of the stories I share a lot is the fact that I was a very expressive child, and that was very shut down in my family. Like, it wasn't the done thing, it wasn't the British thing to be expressive and to have emotional outbursts. So it was like, you know, I was literally mocked for expressing. And, you know, it's been a huge journey for me to be able to be fully expressed, and it's still a journey I'm on. But having a child and being able to hold that space for her to express her fullest expression of herself. I think the first time I told her to shush was on Sunday when we went to Kirtan, and I took her to Kirtan for the first time in a while because I'd kind of been told that I shouldn't bring my child because she's a bit noisy a while back. So I took her, and she was kind of a bit noisy, and I was like, shh, we're gonna get kicked out again. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's 3, and that's the first time, literally the first time that I told her to be quiet, because I was so aware that I had been constantly squished and squashed and squished and repressed, and don't say this and don't say that and don't express like this and be careful, that person might think like this, da 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 da. And that comes so far down, like my mother and my paternal line as well, you know, it's both of them. But just that ability to, which is obviously a lot of the work you do on a very deep level, that ability to pull up those roots. Like, we're not severing cords, right? It's not like, fuck you guys, I don't want to be a part of it. It's like pulling up those roots that are dead and that aren't serving us, and kind of replanting them somewhere else and being like, okay, you know, we've got this connection, I'm going to plant it in more fertile soil where I can really like appreciate what's come down from there. And then if you are, you know, a parent or plan to be a parent, like choosing to change that whole pattern, change that whole way, you know. And I know now that I'm going to have the most wildly expressed child, and she'll be the most wildly expressed adult.
Yeah.
Because I won't tell her to shut up.
Yeah. That's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And I love your metaphor of the roots, of replanting them into fertile soil. 100%. Yeah, really gorgeous. And yeah, I love that. I can totally see you at Kirtan being like, shh, but I don't want to shush you.
I actually did have to put my hand over her mouth. I felt terrible, but I was just like, I don't know what to do. The
Yeah.
iPhone's not working anymore. The cartoon.
Yeah.
But you know, it was just such a nice realization that I got to 3 years old and I'd never told my child to not be herself, to not express in the way that she. So some other, oh my gosh, there's so many questions. I know we had a kind of a little bit of a brainstorm around questions. I feel there's so many more. I don't want to kind of spring too much on you, that you're like,
It's okay.
So this is, yeah, this is a good one. This is one that we did talk about. Even if you have like a really good relationship with your mum, or did have if she's no longer, you know, on this worldly plane, is it still worthwhile healing the motherline? Would you still have motherline, I don't want to say issues, like motherline imprints that could be affecting you in some way?
Yeah, for sure. And it is a great question. The answer is yes, because as we said at the beginning of the conversation, you know, this isn't exclusively about our relationship with our mum. It's about our relationship ultimately with ourselves, but how that has been impacted and influenced by all of those factors that we spoke about, like, you know, generations prior to that first generational step with our mum, our ancestral lineage, and also, you know, the feminine sort of societal climate that we're a part of now, and how that is shifting, and how different that is to the climate that even just two generations back that our grandmothers were a part of, you know, let alone going further back than that. It's just so vastly different now. And as you know, I'm 42 years into my life, and it's so vastly different from when I was 10. So that's sort of enough of a scope to give me things to work with. I guess in that case, you know, we're talking about the energy of the motherline versus a direct relational impact. I have an awesome relationship with my mum. I actually noticed that she was watching. I'm not sure if she still is, which is awesome. Hi, Mum. It wasn't always that way, you know, we've been through our challenges, but, and I am incredibly grateful to her for her acceptance and blessing of this work, because, you know, that's really meaningful to me. But yeah, I guess even if, no matter what our relationship is like with our mum, and in the case that our mum isn't still here or has already transitioned, this work is still valuable and viable, because it's really a doorway. You know, it's a doorway into reflecting on how we've been influenced, and whether that still resonates and aligns with who we see ourselves and want to be now. I hope that answers the question.
And another question: what about? And I don't know if you're going to have an answer for this one, because this one I didn't ask you about before. What
Okay.
about the father line? Is this? I mean, obviously there's a thing. There's got to be a thing, right? But you know, why, for example, like why don't you work with the father line, or does that come into the work sometimes that you do? Do you feel that the father line is as potent as the mother line? Because one of the things which you shared, which I'd heard before, it just blows my mind every time, is the fact that, you know, we were in our grandmother's tummy, right? And I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was like, oh my God, my grandchildren are already here. Like, they're already picking up the imprints, right? So I get that with the motherline, there's this real strong connection, because we are physically connected to our grandmothers, even if you never met her in person. Whereas it's not the same with men, right? Because men, it's sperm, and that just gets cycled, and it doesn't, you know, obviously we have a certain number of eggs and that's it. So I don't know, do you just have anything to kind of share on that topic?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It's so interesting. I was just talking about this with a male friend yesterday. Um, and since I've been talking predominantly about the mother line, that question has come to me more, and men have contacted me about, well, can I work with you with the father line? So I love that. I love because the masculine and feminine in all of us, they just want to feel equal. They just want to lay down, to use Carl Jung, they just want to lay down side by side with each other within each of us. So this idea of the father line is super potent. And my friend and sort of peer that I was talking with yesterday is doing like really incredible work with men and men's circles, and giving men the space to speak from their heart and speak of their truth, and to listen to each other in that kind of environment and space, which is amazing. And I've had the privilege of working with a couple of men who are just so brave and open and ready to do healing through their lineage, through their male lineage, where they acknowledge that there has been wounding and trauma and the carrying of pain down to them, and they're of their impetus, like it stops with me. That's it. I'm not going to carry this on anymore. And where there is divine feminine, there has to be masculine. There has to be that beautiful, complementary, side by side kind of energy. And I don't feel that one is more valuable than the other, or that either should exist in the place of or exclusive of the other at all. I guess, for me, the mother line is profound right now, because for such a long time I was disconnected from my feminine and felt that it was overpowered. So this sort of allowing of that to be more fully expressed, and releasing of anything that was perhaps limiting or holding that back, is through the mother line. But wow, I mean, I think I think it's really significant that that question has been asked of me a number of times since I've been saying the word and sharing the feeling of the mother line. Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to see what transpires out of that, right? Like that's that spark, like that's that idea, like, okay, there's something else. And the which is essentially what you're doing, but the phrase that keeps coming up for me is ancestral healing. Right, it's that kind of this sort of a deeper, broader, like going right back into like who your ancestors are, which is such a hot topic at the moment. This whole idea of ancestral healing. So I love it. I love it. So then, just finally to wrap up, like, could just share with everyone, like how do you work with people? Like, how can people get in contact with you? What does it look like to work with you? Can you offer what you do online, or is it just sort of in person? Just so if anyone's watching this and they're like, I need to heal my mother line. What would be the next steps?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I work either in person or online. And so you can reach me very simply by sending me a DM in Instagram, or there's a link that goes through to a website where you can email me, or you can read more about me personally and the Motherline work. And I work with Reiki energy. So sessions are an opportunity to connect via conversation, first of all, and to really get, I guess, a verbal understanding and paint a picture of where you're at. And then so usually the first half of the session is spent doing that, and the second half of the session is spent using and connecting in with the Reiki energy, and that gives us an opportunity to access what perhaps isn't conscious, what isn't necessarily of the mind or the body, but that energetic level of things, that soul level of things. So yeah, sessions are one-to-one, personal, private, and I'm developing at the moment a sort of a more of a pathway, I guess, for someone who really knows that healing their mother line is something that they're committed to and want to put their energy and time into. And that's on the developing table. So that should be coming up soon. But I am still working with people right now who are on their own journeys, and we are just navigating that together and finding their way through healing through their mother line. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense and it's easy to find me if you want to.
Well, definitely it's super easy to find you through this video. So yeah, thank you so much. I love this conversation. I think it's such an important conversation to be having. I think this, I mean, I'm going to say I don't think there's anybody that can't resonate with there being some kind of like mother thing going on, whether it's from, you know, behind us, or, you know, the sort of the projection forward of us being mothers ourselves. So thank you so much for your precious time, and your wisdom, and your energy, and thank you for sharing with
Thank
us.
you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so appreciative. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And if anybody has questions after this, like if you want to message Amy, then just, you know, go ahead and message her directly. If you've got another line, she does. Wonderful. All right, see you, love.
Bye.